part of the Earglue Media family of podcasts.
You're listening to Petticoats and Poppies.
History Girls at the Movies.
Welcome to Petticoats and Poppies, History Girls at the Movies. We're your hosts, Maggie and
Nicole. So you might think that Matt Damon and The Great Wall broke us, and that's why we haven't released an episode in a few weeks.
But actually, we just didn't want to pull away attention from the protests that have been going on and the Black Lives Matters movement with something as frivolous as our podcast. But we decided to come back and to highlight a famous historical figure that many people likely don't realize wasn't white.
So we've been doing what we can to help the movement going on, and we urge you to do whatever you can as well, whether that's signing petitions, calling your government representatives, giving money to local organizations or organizations like Black Lives Matter or the NAACP. And don't forget to also register to vote and to make sure to get out and vote for both your local and national elections.
Yes, it is so important that you get out and vote. If you are in the United States, do not forget to vote during your primaries and during the election this November. And we're going to segue into what we've been watching. I don't think we actually talked about what we have been watching during our last episode, and I know I have watched a ridiculous amount of television in the last month and a half. I finished watching the new TV show from Shaftesbury Films. They are the Canadian production company that makes Murdoch Mysteries, which actually got renewed for a new season, and I'm super excited about that. But they have this new TV show called Dead Still, which is about mortuary photography. And it is about a guy who does that photography, and he's also solving a crime, and it's fantastic. It's a period piece and beautiful costumes, beautiful story. Super awesome. I'm hoping that gets a second season because it was great. I also finished watching Belgravia, Hollywood. I'm finishing up What We Do in the Shadows. And then I also watched Dear White People, which was probably one of the best shows I've watched on Netflix. And I beg all of you to watch it because it was a really eye-opening experience and just handled in such a way that it really helps you confront a lot of aspects of racism that you otherwise might not be aware of. And then I'm also almost done watching The Politician, and Grantchester just came back, and Nicole still hasn't watched that.
I'm not a TV person, Maggie. You know this.
I can tell.
The fact I have watched more TV while we've been quarantined than I think I've watched in the last 3 years combined.
Madness.
I'm
Sheer
a film
madness.
person. I'm a film person. I'm not a television person. I don't have the wherewithal to commit to television.
So you like being attached to a character for an hour and a half and not committing to 13 seasons of a character.
Precisely. I like to be able to check something off my list, log it in my Letterboxd, and be done.
Oh, you film people.
Yep. But I have watched some stuff. I think since the last time we gave an update, I watched the HBO miniseries Catherine the Great with Helen Mirren, which was really, really beautifully done, really great design on that. I watched High School Musical, the series, which was delightful. Such a surprise.
Really?
I don't really like High School Musical.
Me neither.
Yeah. This series is so much better than the High School Musical movies. First of all, it's really diverse, both in terms of ethnicities and in terms of sexualities. You even have a character who has two moms. But also, I think that it's a much better representation of high school theater than the High School Musical movies ever were. So I really recommend it. It's half-hour episodes, so it's really easy to kind of blaze through it.
That is the only one that Disney has asked me to review on the feedback forum, and I haven't watched it. So
I really think you would like it, Maggie. I think you would enjoy it, and I think it's altogether it's maybe 5 hours.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's really easy to get through. What else have I watched? I watched all of Run, which had so much potential, and
I've heard
the ending was not good. But hey, Donald Gleason, I did it for you, babe. And it was worth it.
If you're listening,
putting that out into the universe. But then I've also been watching New Girl since quarantine began, I started over from the beginning, and I'm on season 3 now. And it's really funny because I feel like the internet is suddenly having this like moment for Nick Miller. He's been like all over my Twitter feed.
He is like a quarantine icon.
He is. And it's funny because Nick Miller is my ideal man. Like, I knew this from episode 1.
I love him so much.
So it's been great to see that everyone else loves him too.
You know, I have like a whole folder on my phone of like memes and reaction pictures. I only have one saved from New Girl, and I saved it in like December, and it's when she's like, "This will be our year."
Oh my god.
Because I was going to use it, and then I never did, and obviously it's because I knew it wasn't going to be her year.
Oh, that's too funny. I also just started Love Life, which is on HBO Max. It's the Anna Kendrick show.
Oh, how is that?
I have only watched one episode, but I'm obsessed. It's so good. It feels kind of, I want to say a little bit maybe like Sex and the City, but for people like us, Maggie, if you know what I mean.
I mean, I like Sex and the City.
But like, I feel like whenever I watch Sex and the City, I don't really relate to them. Like, that's not the life that I lead. Whereas
true.
Anna Kendrick's character feels much more like, you know, my friend group of people. So
I'm still waiting for HBO Max to be on Roku.
Oh my god, same. I hate watching stuff on my computer, but I made an exception because I love Anna Kendrick.
Me too.
My next thing I'm going to start is my friend Dan has finally talked me into, I'm going to watch The Great.
Please report back.
I'll report back. So get ready, everyone. I will come back and let you know how The Great is going for me. I have this is why I don't do TV often though, Maggie, is because I have an issue where when should I start something, I have to finish it.
Oh, you see, I have no problem stopping something.
Yeah, I'm not good at that. It eats at me for years. For years. The only thing I've ever properly stopped is like Supergirl. And even that, like in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, but one day I'm going to go back and watch the rest of it.
See,
yeah.
If a show does me dirty, it's dead to me.
See, that is why I don't do TV.
Yeah. You know, I will say for people who are listening to this, there are shows like I've watched that at first I was like, oh, this isn't for me. And Hollywood was one of those shows. I watched like the first 3 episodes and I was like, oh God, it's so cheesy and it's so not trite, but something akin to that word. But then it really picked up its stride and you really fall in love with the characters. And I know a couple weeks back, we were asking our followers, like, what have you been watching? And a couple other of our followers and listeners had been watching Hollywood. And there was a lot of mixed responses from people who hadn't watched it yet. And I really think that's a show you should give a chance. I think, I'm terrible at remembering names, but Laura Harrier is phenomenal in it. It is a brilliant show. But so sometimes shows are worth taking, some time to get into.
Yeah. I am planning on watching Hollywood at some point. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
You would enjoy it. But this movie that we watched, first couple minutes into that, and I actually was wishing I was watching The Great Wall.
Yeah, there's a very specific reason for that, though, Maggie.
Yes, well.
Honestly, I just want to say right off the bat, Three Musketeers, 2011, one of the best things I can say for it, Matt Damon's not in it. I feel like this is my shtick now. I just have to go with it.
It is.
So we decided we were going to talk about the 2011 Three Musketeers film. And part of that, I think, will be explained in our first historical segment after we kind of give our initial reactions to the film. But I have a very funny history with this movie, which I specifically didn't tell Maggie before the episode. So I saw this film in theaters. Whenever it came out back in 2011, I was a junior in high school, and I saw it on a date.
Oh.
This film was my first ever date, the only movie date I've been on to this day. And it was my friend, who I'm actually still friends with, asked me out, and he asked me to go see this movie because he knew I wanted to see it because I loved Logan Lerman. And I gotta say, I remember the whole way through the movie being a lot more interested in Logan Lerman than the guy that I was there with.
Oh my gosh, Nicole.
We broke up like story. We broke up like 4 days later.
He just couldn't compete with Logan Lerman.
I mean, to be fair, we're still friends now. I set him up with his next girlfriend. Like, it's fine. But yeah, this is the only movie I've ever seen on a date.
The only movie I saw on a date was the Gerard Butler movie Timeline.
Why do we pick movies like this for dates?
I don't know. I think it says something about us and also why we're friends.
Too true. Oh man. But okay, in rewatching this, and I've not seen it since that date in 2011.
Wow.
Man, this is a movie. It's a movie.
Yeah.
It's directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, and I feel like a lot of the movie makes sense whenever you realize that he's known for like the Resident Evil movies.
But those are good.
Yes, but would you see those movies and think, the man who made this should adapt a classic novel?
No.
Precisely.
Categorically no.
Precisely. There's so much so they say it opens and they're like, it's the dawn of the 17th century. And everything kind of goes downhill from there. Yep. I will say for the film, the men in this film are so hot.
They
so
are.
many
Luke
hot men.
Evans,
Luke Evans, Matthew McFadden, I don't know what they were doing with Orlando Bloom, but it was kind of working for me.
Okay, so he reminded me of something that would be like a villain in, do you remember that TV show on, it was either Nickelodeon or Disney Channel, Toontown?
Oh my God.
Or something like that. He looked like a villain from that.
Also, it's
with
a
that
good
hair.
Thing. It's a good thing that they had him looking so weird, though, because I never realized how much during this time period he and Luke Evans looked alike until I watched this movie.
So much alike.
Every so often there was a scene where I was like, wait, sorry, which one of them was that? And that, like, hold on.
Yes. I almost wonder if they didn't realize that when they were casting, and they were like, oh yeah, let's get Orlando Bloom. He's due for a bad movie.
Yeah. Also, like, I love Logan Lerman. I've watched worse movies than this for Logan Lerman. But the hair on him.
Okay, so this wig looks like a wig that my mother bought to costume a child playing Junie B. Jones in a child theater production. It looks like a girl's wig. I even paused the screen and said, Mom, come in here and please look at this. And she was like, yep.
There was a whole section that I kind of missed what was going on because I was staring at his hair.
It's so bad.
Because for for a little bit, I was like, is it a wig or is it extensions?
Okay, so Luke Evans' hair was his hair, 100%.
Okay, yeah.
But Matthew's hair was not his hair. Because there's a scene where it's starting to do its own thing in a way that hair doesn't do.
Yep.
And as somebody who wore a human hair wig for 30 days, it's very easy to tell when a wig is not cooperating.
Yeah. I gotta say, though, in Logan's defense of this, Logan Lerman walked so that Timothée Chalamet could run. We all have to recognize that Logan Lerman is the OG white boy of the month. Noah Centineo, Timothée Chalamet, you owe yourselves to Logan Lerman.
So many things I could say about those boys.
There is a bit in the movie where Logan Lerman says, I thought you'd all be a little more heroic to the Musketeers. Oh my God, and I was like, me too, same.
Can we just talk about James Corden for a minute?
I literally have in my notes, why the F is James Corden in this movie?
All I could think of was he was the Peter Pettigrew to the 17th century Marauders group.
Yes. Oh my God.
He was like, actually, there's 5 of us.
Oh my. Also, just the way that they had him looking, I was reading some reviews of this, though, and I did see someone who said, finally a movie that knows how to use James Corden. And that really cracked me up. Because I was like, honestly, kind of, whatever he's doing, it's kind of working in a weird way. He should be the weird
way.
He should be the weird, comic relief servant character.
I love when he's like, would this be a bad time to ask for a raise?
All of us during quarantine.
Oh my gosh.
Now, to this movie's credit, there are a few good things. Some of the sword fights are pretty fun.
Oh.
I wouldn't call them good, but they're fun. And also, Orlando Bloom looks like he's having the best time.
He really does.
I want to get in on that. I want to give that performance too. I think he looks like he's loving what he's wearing. I think he was like, yes, pay me money to play dress up.
Orlando Bloom deserves the world.
There is so much in this film that doesn't work. First of all, let's just address the fact that it does not work as an adaptation of The Three Musketeers.
I'm sorry. This is not The
the Three Musketeers. The thing that I think, my two least favorite things about this movie are, one, the CGI, particularly the beginning scene with the water.
Yes.
I've never seen worse water CGI. Ever.
No.
Secondly, the romance with this chick,
God.
Constance, had me cringing. Also, there's a line in this. Honestly, anything in the film to do with romance, I was pretty much like not here for it.
So bad.
But the bit where one of them, where I think it's Logan Lerman's character, is like, what happened to him? And one of the other Musketeers is like, what happens to any man? A woman. And I was like, did they really write that? Did someone actually write that down?
Yes.
That, like, it's a very weird thing in that the romance in this that actually worked the best for me was the one that's meant to be, like, weird and gross between the king and the queen. Like...
Yeah, and I don't understand why they framed it like that. That was
very different from the book.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, totally worlds apart. It kind of worked for me, though. I was like, honestly, this weird foppish king man, it's kind of working for me. Like, yes, babe, go get your woman. Like...
Seriously.
I was like, you're now the mouse king and queen. I love you.
They were both so mousy.
I was like, we love Hufflepuffs.
And they were so blonde.
Aggressively blonde.
Aggressively very, very
There's a lot of aggressive blondness in this movie, actually. Just a lot of aggressive hair in general. And aggressive costumes.
Oh, truly
aggressive Party
costumes.
City costumes.
And also the accents are...
What accents?
I saw one review that referred to all of the characters and were like, this guy's accent is supposed to be Irish and this guy's supposed to be English and there's not a French accent to be found in France. And this kid just rolled up from, I think it was Malibu or something like that, making a joke about Logan Lerman's very American accent.
It's one of those movies where I don't know why they bothered asking
the
anyone.
Anachronism.
Yeah. Like, we should have just let him do whatever they wanted.
I felt like this movie was what happens if you take Stardust, Sherlock, and Pirates of the Caribbean and let them have a baby. Because
but like a baby that they don't supervise.
Yes, because the music sounded like Sherlock.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually looked up to see if it was the same composer, and it's not, but it has some very similar chord progressions, especially during the fight scene on the roof. Which is almost the same music.
Yeah.
And then obviously the airships. Have you seen Stardust?
I haven't.
Oh my God, Nicole.
I know.
Please watch that tonight. I think it's on Netflix. It is a beautiful movie and you need it in your life. But Stardust has airships and then obviously Pirates of the Caribbean because you have Orlando Bloom on something vaguely pirate shipish.
Yeah.
It was just a mess.
I feel like the thing is, it would have been a better film if it had kind of gone to the campy level that Pirates goes to. But it wasn't quite committed to the camp enough.
No.
But it also wasn't not camp. You know what I mean? Like, it was in that weird in-between.
They should have just, like, committed to this being their own story.
Yeah. And they should have committed to it being a comedy. Because I think it was so funny, but it was a lot of things where I was like, this is hilarious, and I don't think they meant it to be.
Yes. Also, Mila, baby, I know he's your husband, but why were you in this film? I love Mila Jovovich so much. But her character, Milady. Also, Milady, really? Oh.
Milady is a great character, too. Like,
I know.
But she's not in this movie. Like...
No.
This is a Walmart imitation.
When Matthew's character tells her to jump off the ship or whatever, she jumps off the ship. He's going to shoot her. And then he turns and he goes, she did that for me. She knew I couldn't bear shooting her. And I was like, bro, you didn't have to shoot her.
Oh my God. I will say, I actually think that Matthew Macfadyen is one of the only people in this whole movie who gives any kind of characterization.
Yes.
Like, he's actually out here trying to give a good performance, like, against the script, against his low screen time, and he's doing his best, which is more than I can say for the rest of the cast, honestly.
I mean, I feel like Luke Evans was just, like, a pretty prop.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I don't remember him saying anything, really.
No. I think there's a couple of lines about something about the church, and that's it. Like 2 lines, maybe?
Yep.
Or he's just, like, narrating things that Matthew Macfadyen's character is doing.
Yes. It's just like,
Like, okay.
okay.
Like, me too, but okay. But, like, Matthew McFadden really is the, I think, standout in the film in terms of, like, I actually got a sense of what this character is, like, who he's meant to be.
He's actually read the book.
Yeah. Oh, and you know he has. Like, yeah. So shout out to Matthew McFadden, because he tried. He tried his damned best. Yeah. But, so, do you want to tell the people why we torture ourselves with this movie?
Yes. I think it is time to tell the people why. So Alexandre Dumas was born in 1802 in Agny, France. He wrote many novels. I'm sure if you're listening, you've probably heard of the Three Musketeers, which we're talking about. And you've likely also heard of the Count of Monte Cristo. His father, Thomas Alexandre Dumas, was the highest ranking man of African descent ever to lead a European army. He was the first person of color in the French military to become brigadier general in Napoleon's army, and he was also the first to become divisional general, and then also the first to become the general-in-chief of the French army. So he was super high ranking. Unfortunately, his father fell out of favor when Alexander was a child, and by the time of his death in 1806, when Alexander was only 4 years old, his family ended up being basically forced to live in poverty, which is kind of what had him turn to kind of starting to write and kind of leaning into that skill of his. Alexander's grandmother, Marie Cesette Dumas, was a black slave from, I'm going to totally butcher this name, Jérémie Saint Dominique, which is Haiti. And both Alexander and his father chose to use Marie Cecette's surname rather than taking their father's surname. So the Dumas line is matrilineal, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Alexander went on to marry an actress named Ida Ferrier, who he had 3 children with. He is also alleged to have had upwards of 40 mistresses with at least 4 children who he acknowledged. And one of them, who actually was named Alexandre Dumas as well, went on to become a novelist.
Oh my God, a busy man.
I know. Him and Victor Hugo got up to some fun. He was a member of the Club des Hassengents. Nicole, you know French. You should be saying all these words.
We'll go with that. That's close enough.
It's close enough. I took 1 semester French. And Victor Hugo was actually a member of the same club. He also wrote another novel, which isn't as well known. And I think it's called Georges. I only know how to... George? Okay, I only know how to say that in German, which is Georg. Which is like, different name, different
Not
language.
That.
I have a bunch of ancestors named Georg, so I always think of it that way instead of Georges.
Georges.
And one review of this novel said that it was filled with intrigue, romance, and deadly vengeance. Georges is the story of a wealthy mulatto boy who is driven from the island home by the racist landowners, returning to Mauritius as an accomplished... Mauritius? Mm-hmm. Yep, there you go. Mauritius as an accomplished young man. Georges pits his strength against a powerful plantation owner, leading a dramatic slave uprising and claiming the heart of a beautiful white woman. Georges stands apart as the only book by Dumas that explores the potent subject of race. So that definitely sounds like a book that needs to be made into a movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of Three Musketeers for the 500th time.
No kidding.
In 2002, for the bicentennial of Dumas's birth, the French president Jacques Chirac had a ceremony honoring the author by having his ashes reinterred at a mausoleum in the Pantheon in France. Chirac acknowledged the racism that had existed in France and said that the reinterment in the Pantheon had been a way of correcting that wrong, as Alexandre Dumas was now enshrined alongside fellow great authors Victor Hugo and Émile Zola. Chirac also noted that although France has produced many great writers, none had been so widely read as Dumas, as his novels have been translated into more than 100 languages and have also inspired more than 200 motion pictures.
That's so cool. I actually have been to the Pantheon and have seen where he's interred along with Victor Hugo and Émile Zola in this kind of section devoted to great French authors.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm so glad they did that.
Really cool. But I think it's interesting because before you told me, I had no idea that he wasn't white. I kind of saw the name, assumed he was some French white dude because, he wrote all these famous books and
that have always been very white.
Yeah. So I think it's important to kind of lift up these lesser known historical Black figures. And I say lesser known, obviously he's quite well known for his work, but I think people don't know as much about him. I feel like we tend to hear about the same Black historical figures over and over.
Yes.
And there are so many fascinating, interesting ones that are less explored. And I think that it's high time. First of all, I'm like, instead of another Three Musketeers movie, let's get a movie about him.
Yes.
Like, that's what I want to see.
That is accurately cast.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when I was doing my research, I read that there's been at least 2 movies that have had a character that was supposed to be Dumas and they were white.
Of course.
And if you look up pictures of him, it is very clear that he is not white.
Right. It's not like the whole like, oh, was Beethoven? Like, oh.
Yes.
It's like if you see a picture and you're like, oh, okay, he's not white. Like,
and then there's paintings of his father, and his father is very obviously a Black man.
Yeah.
So it's like, come on, history, do better.
It's a weird, I feel like, thing about collective memory and how the French have kind of pushed that fact to the side, I feel like. And this presented
and it sounds
outwardly.
Like in 2002, the president at that point did recognize that was a serious issue.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're still adhering to that these days.
Yeah. We talk, obviously, as we're both Americans, and America has huge issues with racism, but we're hardly the only country that has that problem.
And that's why the current movement has spread across the entire world to every
continent. So the next topic I wanted to talk a little bit about was adaptations of the Three Musketeers, because this thing has been adapted over and over and over and over. And a lot of them are really subpar adaptations.
Yup.
The first stage adaptation was an opera that actually Dumas himself wrote the libretto for. So literally, like, even in his lifetime, people start adapting it. And then there's a musical version done in 1928, written by William Anthony Maguire with lyrics by P.G. Wodehouse, and that's revived in 1984. But there's also a very popular Dutch musical that premiered in 2003, and this one I'd actually heard of. It's been performed in Germany and in Hungary, and it famously had the really well-known like German musical theater leading lady, I guess, Pia Dawes as Milady de Winter.
Ooh.
Yeah, so like even within the theater tradition, there's a history of adaptation there, but it's obviously a very popular subject of film adaptations. There's even a whole Wikipedia page that literally just lists out adaptation after adaptation of this novel. There are, from my count, 26 live action versions and 10 animated, including a Mickey Mouse one and a Barbie one.
Wow.
He could never have imagined. There's also and that number doesn't include, there's also films based on sequels that were written to the novel, or based on like supposedly the children of the original people in the novels, like, and this also doesn't include television series adaptations. There have been 3 BBC miniseries.
Yes.
And I know you were telling me something about the 2014 one.
Yes. So the 2014 BBC series, The Musketeers, is one of my favorite shows. I love that show when it was on. And I remember it came under a bunch of scrutiny for casting Porthos, who was played by Howard Charles, as a mixed race man. But many actually argued that it paid homage to Dumas's own ethnicity. And they also had Chilean actor Santiago Cabrera, who I also love, portraying Armaeus. So it was really nice to see that they didn't stick to the typical trope of people like Charlie Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland playing these characters.
Yeah.
That they kind of leaned in more to history was actually diverse and everybody wasn't white. So if you're looking for a series, I think it was 3 seasons. It's totally worth watching.
The Three Musketeers has an interesting history of attracting big name stars.
Yes.
And you know, the 2011 cast is pretty starry too. Like you've got Matthew McFadden, you've got Luke Evans, you've got Orlando Bloom, you've got
You've also got Mads Mikkelsen.
Mads Mikkelsen, you've got Logan Lerman, who was, you know, kind of the
It boy
of the time. Yeah. So the first adaptation on film is a 1903 French silent film. But then the first one that really goes big is this 1921 film starring, of course, Douglas Fairbanks. Because of course there's a Douglas Fairbanks version of this. There's also a 1933 serial with John Wayne, which I find hilarious. Like, because of course there is. There's a 1948 MGM film starring, you guessed it, Gene Kelly.
Of course there is.
Which, like, okay. What's interesting is kind of what's seen as the best adaptation, the most faithful adaptation to the book, because most of these have been just, like, unfaithful to the novel in every way, which, to be fair, the novel has like a pretty complicated plot, so I can see why if you wanted to do it in 2 hours as a film you would want to rearrange some stuff. But a lot of the adaptations kind of take the character names and are like, okay, good enough, let's write a totally new story. But in 1973, there's a film called The Three Musketeers. Then in 1974, there's one called The Four Musketeers. And so it kind of is an adaptation across those two films. And it's got like Michael York, Charlton Heston, Faye Dunaway. And that's kind of seen, I think, as one of the better ones, as opposed to the 1993 film, which was done by Walt Disney Pictures. Is a very loose adaptation, and it's got Charlie Sheen, of all people, Kiefer Sutherland, Chris O'Donnell, Tim Curry. It is one of those films. I do love Chris O'Donnell. It is one of those films where you're like, this could only have happened in the early 1990s. Like
the year I was born.
So what's interesting is, of all the like sequel films, though, I think the most popular one is 1998's The Man in the Iron Mask, which is set during... so the king in The Three Musketeers is Louis XIII. This film is set during Louis XIV's reign, his son, and it has Jeremy Irons, Gabriel Byrne, who I love, and a young Leonardo DiCaprio.
Who I love.
Yeah, I mean, who we all love. But that was quite popular. I wouldn't say it was like well reviewed, but it was popular.
I think that's still like, it's in that same kind of genre of movies that people watch if it's like on TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like Interview with the Vampire or something like that. That late 90s.
Exactly.
Like, oh, it's on. I'll rewatch it. Yeah.
And I think it definitely was of the sequel films, it's the biggest name one.
Mm-hmm.
But so this is all to say that whenever we wanted to do an episode about the Three Musketeers, we really had our choice of films.
Yes.
But we decided to go with the most recent one, which was in 2011, which honestly, it was all the way back in 2011. That probably means we're going to get a new one soon. If things continue like they have.
I'm sitting here looking at your list, and I'm like, this is a really weird, like 1903, 1933, 1993, and then 1921, 2011, 1948, 1998.
And this isn't even all of them here. Like,
that's just weird, though, that it's so...
I will be shocked if we don't get another Three Musketeers adaptation in the 2020 decade.
Honestly, we should just do it ourselves and like
actually adapt the book, like prove that we read it. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
we
could
read
this twice in high school. I mean, we've got all the time in the world, right?
Yeah. So I think, I would love to hear from our listeners if you guys have seen some of these other adaptations, and if so, what your favorite one is, because I would definitely be down for watching another version, or maybe what you think the worst one is, because, if there are any other ones, this movie is kind of like one of those good bad films where like it's obviously a bad film, but like it's fun to make fun of.
Is it though?
It's fun. It's fun to make fun of, and it's not as boring as like whole chunks of the Great Wall were.
I will say something like super controversial, but I actually like the 1993 Three Musketeers because it was the first Three Musketeers film I ever saw when I was like, I think probably 3 or 4 years old. We got it from Blockbuster.
A lot of people our age, I think, have like nostalgia for it.
Mm-hmm. And I loved Chris O'Donnell because he was also in Batman. He was Robin.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why we ended up renting it from Blockbuster. So like I have a very vivid memory. I actually have it, like I'm going to watch it on Disney Plus, and I just haven't yet.
Incredible.
been ready to go back into that nostalgia yet. Because I know it's going to be terrible because Charlie Sheen is terrible.
Yeah. I feel like it's one of those films. I think we all have those films that were made in that time period or like around then, or in the early 2000s that like you kind of recognize it. Like, this isn't a great movie, but like you love it. Like mine is oh god, what was that like Keira Knightley Princess of Thieves or whatever Robin Hood movie?
Oh god,
I
thought about don't even
love
think about
that movie.
Speaking of Robin Hood, Dumas actually had a version of Robin Hood, which is the Prince of Thieves, and he wrote the libretto for it, I think.
Incredible. We love
a
to see
man of
it.
many talents.
True, I'm writing and womanizing.
Yes.
He must have been a charming man.
I wonder if I wonder if it's like the same thing with like when Victor Hugo died. Remember, all the brothels closed to mourn him. Yes. I wonder if like the same thing happened. Yes. However, most of the women who he had children with were also actresses, so like he very much had a type.
Oh my god, we love to see it.
We love a man.
We love one man, and it's Alexandre Dumas.
Oh gosh,
feels right for us.
It does seem right. Yeah, he goes up there with Victor Hugo.
So we always talk about the costuming.
Yeah, the costumes. I don't have a lot to say this month.
Party City wants their costumes back.
Honest to God, I looked at Milady's first dress and I went, why is this a Spirits Halloween Glinda costume?
Yep.
Because, okay, so I tried my best to research these costumes. From what I can tell, there was a lot of fashion changing in France, which is actually ironically reflected in this film. Orlando Bloom's character makes some snarky remark to the king about, oh, I think I wore that last year, like your outfit's out of fashion. It changed a lot during this period of time, especially at this dawn of the 17th century, as it claims to be set in. And for the most part, the costumes seem the right shape. Yes, there was a lot of cleavage and a lot of shoulders shown at that time. So all of those were unfortunately accurate. It's the fabrics used. There is a lot of strange metallic sheen on everybody's costumes. And yes, costumes were that vibrant. They had plenty of dyes at their command, especially the aristocrats. So like all the colors. However, I was a little disappointed that I didn't see any like hot pinks, because hot pink was very popular in France during this period of time. And personally, I would have loved to see Orlando Bloom in like a hot pink, Ponzi outfit, because that would have been awesome. Instead of that teal blue thing that he walks down in, that would have been awesome if it was hot pink. But the costumes were just like not great. Even the Musketeers costumes were not musketeer-y.
I mean, they tried with those hats, man.
They did. They tried. I really tried to do research on the actual costumes and the costume construction. And there are no interviews, as far as I can find, with a costume designer, who is Pierre-Yves Guéroud, who ironically has costumed one of your favorite actors, Matt Damon, in the Bourne franchise.
Oh man, that explains it all.
Yeah, and he also did the French Beauty and the Beast in 2014. He hasn't done a lot of like big name films, which I don't know if that might be why he hasn't been interviewed a lot about his costume design, because there was definitely some choices. And if you ever hear this, Pierre, I'm very sorry. I respect your work, because I did find a video of them making the costume appliques. So almost every single piece of jewelry, every single piece of like gold and metal encrusted like rhinestones and sparkly bits on all of their dresses were all hand done and hand painted.
Oh, Jesus.
I found, yeah, they definitely had more time on their hands. It was insane. I was watching them make all of the custom rings for all of the guys who had rings on their fingers. That necklace that they're after the entire movie is handmade. The dremeling with the metal and the detailing, all handmade. So like in regards to like construction, they work their asses off. And I have to give the costume department props for that. I can give them no props on actual design. It's just historically a mess.
I almost wish that they'd gone like it. This whole film feels like they kind of wanted to go steampunk, And
Yes!
I almost wish they just committed to it.
Okay, Mads Mikkelsen's character with the eye patch is 100% the steampunk king we are all waiting for. Like, just go with it. And I will say, that costume right out of the gate really bothered me because his hat, he had just been riding a horse. He had not a speck of dust on his costume. His hat looked like it had been pulled out of the wrapper from Spirit's Halloween and thrown on his head. It was too perfect. I am all about aging. You can make bright, fancy, fantastical costumes look actually worn, and it'll make your scene 110% better. Just look at any, like, really authentically done, like Harriet, for example. I use that as a reference because I am friends with the people who did the aging for the costumes on that film. It took them like 3 months to age all of her dresses, and it looks lived in. It looks real, and it's like painting mud into things. It just makes a scene look better, and I think that could have helped some of the gaudier costumes in this movie.
Yeah, it does. I think that's part of also why a lot of these costumes feel very Party City. Is because there's
pristine,
no aging done on them, so they look too clean and out of the box.
Yeah, and that's just it. I have a lot of feelings about that, but you know, I did like the choices they made for the king and queen. I really liked some of his outfits, especially a light green suit that he had, and I really liked her dress that she danced in at the end of the film.
Yeah, occasionally, like you said, there would be a good costume, mostly in the worn by the king or queen.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish that they had committed more to the period, or to like a steampunk aesthetic, or just to anything.
I mean, they had airships. It's steampunk.
They had airships.
Just make this some, like, inspired by the Three Musketeers, high fantasy, steampunk. France has all of this cool new technology. And
I wish that they'd taken it fully, like, historical fantasy.
Yeah, me too.
Which, okay, so speaking of airships, I did some research.
Oh my.
We see a lot of airships in this movie.
So many airships.
Which, there's even, like, this big battle scene between airships, and I had to know if there was any historical basis for this, because obviously there weren't airships like we see in the movie in France at the time, but
there was weren't.
Like, surprise! So I looked up airships, and they certainly were not around at the dawn of the 17th century. There are 3 types of airships: rigid, semi-rigid, and non-rigid. Non-rigid airships are also known as blimps, which I thought was interesting. I didn't know that a blimp was a subcategory of airship. So there is a Jesuit priest named Francesco Lana de Terzi, sorry, I probably butchered that, who wrote about an aerial ship in 1670. Certainly didn't actually make it, and you definitely could not use his design to actually get anything off the ground, but that is, I think, like the first mention, at least in Europe, of an aerial ship. And then in 1783, you have Lieutenant Jean-Baptiste Marie Musnier, who wrote a paper and then published these drawings about like a sort of airship with 3 propellers and like a sail-like rudder on it. Didn't actually make it. No proof that it would work, but he was thinking about it. And so then in the following year, in 1784, you do have the first person to kind of like get an aircraft off the ground, but it's literally just like a hand-powered propeller on a balloon. And that's Jean-Pierre Blanchard. And the following year, Jean-Pierre Blanchard actually builds a balloon that he puts wings and a tail on, and he does cross the English Channel with it. But this looks more like a hot air balloon than the airships that we see in the movie. So basically, yes, people were already interested in air travel at the time, but they certainly weren't just flying ships that belong in the water, in the air, which is what we kind of see in the movie. Like it definitely would not have looked like that, and there's no real basis for that. I mean, they just wanted airships. So the other thing that I wanted to delve into from this film is another thing that like has some actual historical basis, which is the king and queen that we see, King Louis XIII and Queen Anne, who is known as Queen Anne of Austria, despite the fact that she is from Spain. That has to do with the fact that she's of the Habsburg line, and at a certain point they started being called like Anne of Austria. So I looked into it. In the film, King Louis XIII is portrayed as a sort of like bumbling, stupid fop. But his relationship with Anne is kind of sweet, which is very different from in the novel. And so Louis XIII was also called Louis le Juste, Louis the Just. He was born September 27th in 1601, and he died on May 14th, 1643, which also makes me question if they say it's the dawn of 17th century, but the king was only born in 1601. I'm not sure how that's working. So he did become king in 1610 at the age of 9 when his father was assassinated. And his mother, Marie de Medici, was his regent for many years, but they eventually had a falling out. He actually banished her. She tried to cause a couple of uprisings that he had to put down. And he eventually starts working really closely with the Cardinal de Richelieu, who is his chief minister. And Richelieu really makes France a leader within Europe. He's also dealing with Huguenot uprisings, in addition to the ones caused by his mom. And Richelieu becomes overwhelmingly powerful. There are some people who say that this is because Louis had some sort of mental health issues or chronic illnesses, but I wasn't able to actually find anything that kind of substantiates that claim. But again, I didn't like delve super deep, so I don't know. They fought a war against Spain, which kind of helped him gain respect in Europe. But then Richelieu dies in December of 1642, and Louis dies of tuberculosis 5 months later, and he's succeeded by his son, Louis XIV. So Anne then was born in Spain in September of 1601 and died in January of 1666, so she outlives Louis by about 20 years. Louis and Anne were only 14 years old when they were married, and they never really had a good relationship. They didn't consummate the marriage for several years. Louis basically had no interest in her at all. She was largely overshadowed in his life by Richelieu and by a series of male favorites of his. She suffered from several miscarriages and really struggled to produce, the heir, which was, of course, the role of the queen at the time. But she does eventually have 2 boys. They have 2 sons. At one point, he accuses her of treason, but nothing really comes from it. Like he finds out that she's writing letters to people in Spain because she's from Spain, but they're at war, so he says it's treason. And after that, all of her ladies are replaced by people who are loyal to him, and all of her correspondence has to be read by someone before it can be sent out. So they really didn't get along. And there are some historians who believe that Louis might have been gay.
It would certainly sound like he might have been.
He has no interest in his wife.
He has male favorites.
He never has a known mistress, and he does have strong attachments to different men over the years. I don't think anyone suggests that that's what was going on with Richelieu. I think that was very much more of a guy who didn't really know what he was doing, finding a man who was willing to make all of his decisions for him. But there are some historians who think that might have been what was going on. And certainly we were seeing things like that in England at the time. So I don't think you can rule it out. But obviously there's no way to ever actually know for sure, particularly as a man of that time wouldn't have even had that word to kind of put to what he was feeling.
Yes.
But I thought that was very interesting. The way that they are portrayed in the film, I think, is actually far kinder to them than their actual historical basis, particularly in terms of their relationship with each other. It's kind of sweet how he's just really wants to find out if his wife actually likes him.
Yes.
And he's worried that she's maybe cheating on him. Which again, that's, she's not, which is again different from in the novel. I think how that all kind of plays out. Definitely not the same kind of Hufflepuffy vibes.
No.
And I don't think that was in history either. But no. I always am interested by portrayals of royals in films such as this. They definitely kind of use him as the comedic relief, which is something that apparently has been a trend in movie adaptations of this since the very beginning of film. Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
I know. I feel like it's one of those things maybe where I think it would make a lot of sense if we assumed that a lot of these filmmakers are basing their movies more on previous adaptations of The Three Musketeers than the book itself. If you know what I mean? They're taking things that they like from those, because I think that might explain some things about them.
somebody should do like a really large project where they go through all of the different adaptations, since there's like 200,
Yeah.
and find
God.
where things deviated from the book.
I would love to see that. Like, if that
That'd be
has,
really interesting.
if that's been done, I didn't find anything online.
No, I didn't
but
find it either.
If that has been done, if someone is listening, is working on that, like, please get in contact.
Hit us up,
honestly.
Because that would be really interesting to see. I always love seeing these like classics and how they have been adapted. Like, I don't know about you, but I have watched every variation of the Phantom of the Opera, including the really bizarre like 80s horror film. And it's really interesting to see how like certain things are used over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
And I'm excited to see what they do with the new Phantom of the Opera movie or TV show. Terrified but interested, because it's another one of those classic films. There seems to be a lot of classics that come out of France that can either be really good or really bad.
I love adaptations. Like, I actually think that is one of the threads through things that interest me in terms of, theater and film and even books, really, and history too. I'm very interested in how things are portrayed and how they're portrayed throughout time and how people take the same story and tell it in different ways. But within that, there is room for things to be reinterpreted in really wonderful ways, and there is room to ruin things.
Yes. With airships.
With airships and bad wigs.
Yes. That's what our new podcast name is going to be. We're going to be Airships and Bad Wigs. You heard it here first.
Oh, God.
So did you want to tell us anything else about the king and queen, or?
I think that's it. I think
that's everything.
I think I've said enough.
I think it's really fascinating how, these characters in these movies and these adaptations were real people, and even these real people, we know so little about what their actual motivations and drives and interests were.
Absolutely. I also think it's funny whenever you have something like this where you start reading into the history of these real people. And I just watched Imitation Game for the first time, and I did a podcast on that over at Next Best Picture. And I was like, God, the history behind this is so much more interesting than how they show it on film. Like, yes. I find that so often, and it really frustrates me whenever you have a fascinating story like this one. Like, I'm very intrigued by this relationship between Louis and Anne in real life. And then it gets portrayed in a film in such a kind of boring way.
Honestly, they just didn't know how to handle romance at all.
At all. I mean, what happened to him? What happens to every man? A woman.
Ugh. Honestly, I'd take any of those bad lines from the Great Wall. Honestly, I don't know. This film was so interesting to me because I remember being obsessed with films like this when I was younger.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, how old would I have been in 2011? I would have been a freshman in college, which is probably why this wasn't even on my radar.
Yeah.
And this would have been my jam when I was in high school. I would have been looking for fan fiction. I would have been like, why is there only one fanfic for this? Like, where is my, oh God, what was Matthew's character's name?
Oh.
Is he Armaeus?
I think so.
Yeah, like, where is my Milady and Armaeus fanfic? Like,
truly. I think the thing about this movie is, I will say, I could totally see putting it on, getting a little drunk with your roommates, you know what I mean? Like, watching it and making fun of it and it being fun in that way. Like, I think it's
like we did with The Great Wall.
Exactly. It's one of those. Although I will say, like, I do think the pacing in this film is better than in, like, The Great Wall, because there was that whole chunk of The Great Wall where we were both like,
is it over
Bring
yet?
back our faves. I'm like, where's Willem Dafoe?
Seriously.
Yeah, whereas this, I felt like at least was paced pretty well.
Yes, and there's no Matt Damon.
And there's no Matt Damon. To be fair, I commend this movie for the fact that it did not cast any annoying, like, Hollywood star non-actor It didn't cast any of the Hollywood, like, pretty boys. Like, there's no Ben Affleck in it. There's no Matt Damon. There's no Brad Pitt. And
there's no Mark Wahlberg. There's none of those.
I'm not saying that, like, I hate all Brad Pitt movies or something. But I do think that it easily could have been one of those films. But instead they casted, like, Luke Evans, who I would much rather see.
And even, like, Matthew, this isn't really his kind of film.
No, not at all.
At all.
But everybody's got to pay their rent, y'all.
It's true. We all have to pay our dues.
Yeah.
Those SAG-AFTRA fees come twice a year. Gotta pay them somehow.
And you gotta say, it is far from the worst thing that poor Logan Lerman has done.
Seriously, what was that other film that he did that was just truly terrible?
Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief? Or Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters, the sequel.
Oh, it was the Sea of Monsters. That's a bad one.
I mean, the Lightning Thief is not good, but Sea of Monsters is, like, truly one of the worst movies ever made.
Was he in that weird, like, magician movie?
Was he? He's done a lot of... I mean, I want to talk to his agent.
Okay, so he just did The Hunters on Amazon Prime.
Yes, and he's also in Shirley.
He is incredible in Hunters.
Yeah.
That movie was, or that series, I watched it in a day, so I felt like it was a movie. Was incredible.
He's so good when he is allowed to be good, like in, I mean, even Perks of Being a Wallflower, Shirley, which just came out, he's very good in that. And I think that he is a really talented actor, and I hope that he goes on to start doing some more good projects. Like, his last couple of things have been really great, and I hope that he gets to do some more good stuff and doesn't get sucked back into, like, bad movies just because he's pretty.
Yes, I don't want him to face the Zac Efron conundrum.
Exactly.
Conundrum.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, overall, it was a movie.
It's not the worst thing I've ever watched, but it's... not...
I won't be watching it again.
Yeah, I don't think I would ever watch it again. Probably.
Probably. I would love to know what people who have also seen this film might think of it. I know that there are a lot of bad films that we like to hold on to because they have fun memories associated with them. So I'm sure people saw this movie on dates and still like it for that reason. This, I feel like, was a fun way to kind of get back into podcasting, to talk about some really important aspects of history that aren't always talked about.
Yep. And I promise that we are going to review a good film soon.
Yes. Sometimes you just need fun. I mean, there's so much going on in the world right now with not only the pandemic, but the pandemic that is known as racism, that it is okay to take a moment and have fun. And to watch a bad movie and just relax. Because we all need that. We all need to just relax for a moment and get back out there and fight the good fight.
Yep.
Like a musketeer.
Better than these ones, though.
Yes, please, please. Thank you all so much for listening to our 6th episode, which is crazy, of Petticoats and Poppies, History Girls at the Movies.
We would love to hear from you guys on social media. Let us know what you think of the Three Musketeers, what your favorite version of it is. We'd also love for you to send us any films that you'd like for us to review. We're going to be picking some maybe like not terrible movies to review next. I feel like
fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, hopefully they turn out good, but we'd love to hear from you about anything that you would like for us to cover.
Yes. And you can find us on social media at HGATM Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can find me at Maggie of the Town and Nicole at Nicole Ackman 16.
You can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or the Airglue Media website. If you like what you hear, don't forget to give us a rating on Apple Podcast. Every few episodes, we're going to be reading our Apple Podcast reviews, so be sure to leave us one if you want to be featured on the show.
And we will be back soon with another exciting episode as we continue to look at period films from a history and film perspective. Until then, stay safe and healthy and fight the good fight.
Bye.
You've been listening to Petticoats and Poppies,
History Girls at the Movies.
I did it for you, babe.